very young in spirit, some of them very old in the body on age. But I've learned so many things, and one of them has been compassion. I've seen how they are so compassionate, but at the same time so energetic. They were always inspiring us to reach our best version. They were always seeing us as complete, no, as if we were really reaching their goal. And many times we were not so happy with our own efforts or our own being, but they always were seeing us in a high vision. So I've learned this from them, to always keep my vision very high, and a vision of the future, and something that will help the other person to overcome their weaknesses, or their weaknesses. And another thing, it was like dedication. I saw in her so much dedication. When they have a clear vision, a clear purpose, then this creates a lot of energy, as you were saying, the importance of energy. And I see that this is also common in great leaders. They create this energy when they have a clear vision of where they want to go, and help others also to join this vision, but also when they have this purpose. They do things with meaning. They do things for something. They do things for something greater than themselves, and also even from the organization. They are thinking about the world. And I think leaders, young leaders, should think like this. They should think about the world, and not only their own small place, no?
There's very often in people who aspire to be a leader a desire to promote their own greatness and promote their own career. But in what you're saying with the spiritual leaders that you've worked with, is that their focus and intention was on creating greatness in the people who were following or were coming up underneath them. And that doesn't diminish the greatness of the leader in any way. If anything, it enhances their greatness. So I'm intrigued by this idea that we can lift other people up to achieve great things, as well as being a leader and in a position of leadership.
Of course, and I've seen that great leaders do this, and they upgrade others, and then others admire them. So it's not that you put yourself in a low position, but you put yourself in a higher position, because then your impact is so great. So I think good leaders, they have the aim to create other good leaders, even better than them. And this is very inspirational, because you feel that this person is seeing you, is appreciating you, is recognizing you, and then you grow. And when you grow, you feel great, but you realize that this greatness is because of this leader also. So then you appreciate also this leader, and you put them in a higher position. So to put others in front, in fact, is to put yourself in front, but in a very different way.
Very beautifully put. I'm going to bring in our fourth panelist into our conversation here, Judy Johnson, who, interestingly, like all our other speakers, has spent a fair amount of her career working in youth programs in the Middle East, in Latin America. She lived in Indonesia. So there was a span of about a decade where she was working very globally, now based in Halifax in Canada, and doing private work, working for diplomats, for professionals working overseas, and people in Canada. Judy, a very warm welcome to you. And you've been looking at this whole subject of leadership for quite a few decades now. Can you set out for us any ways in which you feel our understanding of leadership has changed in the time that you've been working in this field?
Thank you, Philippa, and hello to all the panelists. Very inspiring to hear your words and inspirations and storytelling. It's been about 40 years that I've been working in leadership development now. And when it began, it was with youth primarily, and taking youth into what we call the Global South, youth from Canada to live in the Global South in community development projects. And so the intention was to broaden the horizon, to open the consciousness that we are global souls, we are a global family. And it was very effective for those who participated, definitely. And then I went on to, when you, Dr. Premya, when you talked about diplomats, I completely forgotten. I did diplomat training for 10 years. And this was so interesting because I had just come from working with youth who had this wide-eyed, open, let me learn, humble approach to whatever culture we were in. And then suddenly I had to train the diplomats to go visit these same countries around the world. And at that time, they were training people about the specifics of each culture. And in the 10 years I did the diplomat training, what changed was very reflective of what has changed in leadership development. Is that we were focused very specifically, here's the country, or here's the strategy, here's the culture, here's what you need to know about this place. And over the 10 years, it changed to here's how you need to be. And actually how you need to be effective in an intercultural setting is just the way those youth were. Open, humble, willing to communicate, willing to understand and listen. And if those words sound familiar, that's very much the hallmark of leadership training now, is that it started as, we used to believe leaders were born. And then we thought we could shape them like with chisels and trainings and techniques and scripts and skills. And now it's kind of come full circle back to, you know what, not so much born, but shaped internally. That actually leadership is very much an expression of your character. So bring your best character with you and continue to shape your own character so that you bring your best as a leader to any situation. So that was sort of the change I've seen in leadership development in the last 40 years, but it was very reflected in this, how do we approach any new situation or group or culture or product or strategy? Same basic qualities of being.
So would you say to an extent we're living in a hybrid era where we need to build on the strength and the experience gained in the past, but also be quite light-footed and acquire new skills to cope with the changing landscape that we're having to navigate at this time?
Yes, I would. I love the word agile and I love the word nimble. I feel like sometimes new leaders, when they take over a new department or organization, they kind of want to put their stamp on it and do it completely differently, do it their way. And often what happens is they get a reaction from many of the people in the organization because the old way partly worked, even if they hated it. So, there's mixed feelings. They kind of are happy to have the new leader. But and looking for something new, but at the same time, don't throw out the baby with the bathwater. So I think we are very much in a transitional period, a hybrid period, as you said, Philippa, where let's bring the best of the past forward, but let's co-create the best of the present, what we are each bringing now, so that we create a better future for everyone. So the key for me is co-creation. From past to present to future, myself as an individual leader, but if I have the capacity to get the best from everyone in the group, then collectively we will co-create a better product, a better system, a better process, a better world.
So how does that mechanism happen in reality? If you're working for a company that has a company ethos that you feel needs to change and adapt, how do you go about changing that culture without alienating yourself and making yourself unpopular?
In 3 easy steps. When I get hired to work with organizations for cultural turnaround, it takes a massive infusion of energy for the first 6 months to a year. And it takes 3 years for it actually to shift culture, where you sort of cross the critical mass, which is like 10 to 15% of the people, not half, but 10 to 15% of the people are actually embodying the new culture. but I'm an external and I'm mandated to do that. When you live inside an organization, it's very different because you are influenced by the culture you are trying to change. I mean, in Canada, most of the hippies of the 60s are now our top government bureaucrats. And they all went in thinking they were going to change the world, and they became government bureaucrats. I mean, some cultures are pretty hard to change. So, as an individual leader in an organization, it's all about your team, your department. You know, you do your best not to shield your people, but to feed the aspirations, to feed a new way of doing things by sort of running, what do you call that? Running interference with the larger organization. You know, you find ways to start small initiatives. You find ways to keep your people happy, satisfied, bringing their best to work. And then that energy draws attention. How are they doing that over there in sales? You know, and then that, you know, people, you have to basically establish that it can work. You know, Google called it the random, what did they call them? Random positive radicals. That's what they called them. So if something positive grows, the tiny sapling of that has to get strong enough that people see the beginnings of a tree. That's how new cultures are created. So really the job of the leader is to make sure that sapling gets enough space and protection to grow, right? And when it's rooted a little bit, then others would be willing, they can see it. Because it's a bell curve. Not everybody sees the new culture or even the need for something new. So you got to be in for the long haul, and you have to stay very committed to keeping something small, growing slowly. If you have a desire for quick win, you have many little quick wins, but you really have to commit yourself like a mother to grow and sustain something over time.
Very interesting. So we've got a vision here of individuals between companies and organizations that are doing their bit. But obviously, each of us in our own world is a leader, an influencer of those who are around us and people that we're in connection with. Shunshin, if I can come back to you in Beijing, I mean, you're operating from a place that, you know, has very clear ideas on what makes good leadership. It's one of the qualities that China really respects and admires. And I wonder how you see this sort of self-directed leadership of individuals as opposed to those who are in positions of power, how you see that changing in any way in society today as the world goes through the changes that it's going through, and you know, impulses are springing up naturally around the world for change. How do you see that being rooted in China?
Oh, that's so you mean you want me to say, can you say that question again?
Yes, of course.
I'm
in
not
terms
sure.
of
so big.
because you're working with both individuals and organizations, and I suppose my question is where do you see the interplay between individuals becoming leaders within their own sphere and operating within a system that has leadership coming from external forces as well? How is the individual making changes within that?
I think like China, we have kind of fixed system. And I like Judy was saying, you know, you can't get rid of all the old or all the existing because like such a big country like China, even though, you know, people make so many comments on those, you know, government regulations or systems or guidances, but still, I really appreciate what China is doing to feed so many people, to make the whole economics grow so fast and have like international influences. So I think within the big system, I think lots of things are working. People need to acknowledge the context we are in. Sometimes we work only through ourselves, only with our own little intentions and purposes. But while we are in align with the bigger view, the bigger system, then it's much easier, because I think bigger systems always influence smaller systems. Like the globe influenced China, China influenced all the companies, and the company influenced the little departments. So we just have to accept that we are not alone, and we are greatly influenced by the greater system. We can't just blame it and try to destroy it, or try to say this is not right, this is not right. It doesn't work. And that will create lots of conflicts and lots of drawbacks for ourselves also, because if you don't respect the greater system, then your little system cannot work. Because sometimes, in China, we have one regulation just put out, and then the whole area might get totally influenced. We used to have those companies that teaches outside school lessons, to give children external classes so that they can move faster in the schools. But then a few years earlier in China, we have this regulation that no such schools will exist. So many huge companies that used to be, they're grand, big companies, one night, they're all gone. They can't go on anymore. So this is the fact that we have to accept, that we are greatly influenced. But how we can move forward with that so-called restriction, then it really depends, because we have one company, they totally change what they're doing to kind of be flexible and acknowledge the national regulations, but they can still move on. But if we become grumpy and say, it's all the country's fault, why do the Communist Party do this? If you do that, then you can't move and you're dead. So there's acceptance of the bigger system and the power, the smartness to change, the wisdom to find another new way when you're blocked. I think all those are important. I'm not sure whether I answered your question. Oh, you're muted, Philippa? Oh.
Thank you for reminding me. I'm just keeping myself on mute, but I get so caught up with what you're saying, I forget to unmute myself. Yeah, the ability to kind of see a connection with your own immediate sphere and the wider picture within your operating. But our topic for today on global thought leadership, I wonder what you feel is the importance of maintaining some kind of discipline with your own thinking and with your own mind, and how that plays a part in becoming a leader. What is the connection there between the two?
I think our mind usually go at its own way. So the first thing is to know what we are thinking and to guide it, discipline it, as you said. Sorts of complaints, denial, sorts of disrespect others or the system or the situation, sorts of trying to just yourself win and not caring about others. All these are very damaging. So for us as leaders, if we want to create like a beautiful world we all wish, then sorts of love, sorts of respect for people, for nature, for other culture, for all kinds of religions and ways. All these are crucial. I think the content of thinking sometimes not so important. The way how we think and towards which direction, I think those are so important. We have to be so kind, so big-hearted, so that we can include everyone in our own picture, because only that can work. If everyone is saying my success, my money, my achievement, everybody is saying mine, and there's no world, no our global family anymore. It will be destroyed by our own thoughts. So I think people are their own best friends and their own worst enemies also. It really depends on what we are thinking and how we are thinking.
I think that in a way is one of the legacies of COVID, is that we were all taught very sharply the lesson of our interdependence and of our cooperation to tackle a global phenomenon like we all did. And I think whatever part of the world you live in, I think you're more aware of being part of a global community now than we were perhaps 3 years ago. So that perhaps is a silver lining from the whole experience that we all went through. Abius, for you in Namibia, do you find you're operating within a system that can adapt and change quite easily, or do you feel the weight of tradition bearing down on you heavily that makes innovation actually quite hard to achieve?
Philip, I think you mentioned, just the period of COVID. I think the period of COVID, taught us a lot. It taught us that the world is actually indeed connected. We are all connected. What affects one impacts on the other, and that interdependence as well, came out strongly. It came out through the community's support, which I believe that Namibians were losing, because I think when I grew up in my neighborhood, we were all one big family. My mother could discipline a neighbor's child and vice versa, and it was okay. A child belongs to everyone. And so somehow over the last 20 years after independence, Namibia got independence in 1990, that was disappearing, and people were being so much individualistic, looking only at their own interests. And when COVID came, everybody's just realizing, oh my goodness, I've got a neighbor next to me. And so that community spirit, that collaboration, is coming through again. And so the realization that we are all one is really a fundamental aspect, of growth. And just like Judy said, co-creation actually allows for growth. It allows for betterment of situation. It allows for me to be able to look at my neighbor and to be able to say, oh, okay, you need this, you need that, I can assist with this. And so is innovation as well. You can't just work in a vacuum. You have to work with others. You have to collaborate. You have to co-create. So I think that those are the aspects of the impetus of growth. Yeah.
And when we look at the world situation, whichever way you cut it, whether it's economically, environmentally, socially, politically, we're in it up to our necks, wherever we are in the world. And there is often a sense of, how do we get out of this? Are we waiting for some bright shining star to arise somewhere that will set a trail for global transformation? Or are we waiting for individual transformation to bring about a groundswell of change? When you look to the 21st century and beyond, where do you see the bright lights coming from that will guide us on our journey forwards?
Well, the bright light comes from within. It comes from within. Like I said, I approach it from the very basic. You come as an empty page. You come as an empty book. What are you going to write in that book? Start there. It starts with you. If you cannot, if you cannot fill the pages, then it will just remain empty. You cannot look at political leaders to change the system. You cannot look at religious leaders to change the system. You cannot look at global or corporate leaders to even change the way you are living. It starts with you. And so, embrace that. You have to embrace change. You have to have a vision, actually, have a vision for yourself, have a vision for the future. And therein lies the change when you have a vision, because a vision is an image of a desired future. That's what it is. So what is it that you desire? What is it that you wish to put on those empty pages? Write it down, share it with the next person. And so when you share this shared vision of the future, then change will happen. And change doesn't occur in a big way. It's massive, it's slow, it's dots, of change that occurs, and then it creates this ripple effect. It's like, when you throw one drop of a pebble in still water, it reverberates, and that's really just, if you just plant that seed, that sapling, it will reverberate. And so another person who shared the same vision drops another one, and then it becomes a waves, and then, massive change happens. So it actually just starts with you. It starts with me.
Absolutely. A lot of heads nodding to that, I'm sure. Enrique, anyone please do chip in at any moment, but Enrique, we're talking here about change beginning with me. And you will know this better than me, but my perception of people at the moment is that they're really struggling. They're struggling to cope with their daily lives, with the demands being made on them, with the complexities of modern living. Financially, there's a lot of hardship, and their place of work is very often something that is taking energy from their life and leaving them with a sense that there's no time to look after themselves, never mind, families and friends and communities. What is your perception of how people are personally navigating this period of change that we're in? And do you see any changes with that since the COVID time, with the COVID experience?
Yes, I agree with what you have said. People are, especially leaders, also are suffering a lot because there's a lot of pressure, a lot of work, many things to do and many things to deal and to solve. But I've seen that leaders who are able to connect with themselves, because the inner world is on your hands. So external world is very difficult to control, but your inner world is possible to control. So when I do a process of coaching, nowadays I introduce a lot of times meditation and mindfulness and self-awareness, because I've seen that the leaders that take this for them and they start to work on themselves, on being aware of the impact that they can have in others and in the world, and at the same time to see the circumstances, the organization, the situation, life, how can influence them, then they can deal with that, because they are not like a victim of the circumstances, but they become the protagonist of their lives and also of their work. So the ones who are able to go inside, to understand how their mind works, to understand themselves better, they can have a much bigger impact on others, and they can lead with all these things in a much better way, trying to remain more peaceful, more stable, more centered, because this is very important nowadays. Many things will happen, and it happened to me, and I'm sure it happened to all of you. But how I deal with all these things. So I think the time of COVID has helped us also to find a time sometimes to do this work. You know, in Spain, for example, in the time of COVID, some studies, they have seen that 30% of Spanish people have started to meditate. So it's a big number of people. Then not so many have continued, no, now, but this is another thing, because it's not so easy. But there was a search for something, because we have a little bit more of time in general. For so some people was less time because they had to do many other things. But I have observed this, when you are able to understand yourself, and my perception is that a leader doesn't need to be perfect, but a leader needs to know himself or herself, because when you know yourself, you know how to deal with your own emotions, with your own feelings, with your own thoughts, and then you can create the behavior that you want to create in this particular environment, and then you are able to impact others. You know, when I work with leaders, we do an assessment, and many times the self-assessment is very different than the assessment of others. And there is a big gap of what is the impact that they think that they have on others and the real impact that they have on others. So it's so important for a leader to know what is happening inside myself, how I deliver my speech, my words, my actions, my behavior, and what is the impact on others. Because if not, I'm living a story and they are living a completely different story. And so my work many times is just to make them aware that they have some specific behaviors that are creating a not good impact on others. So when they realize that, then they can change, they feel much better, and then they have a very much good impact on others. And this, I think, would be, in today's world, the need to know yourself, to understand how you can create a different impact, and to change your behavior when is needed, so that you can have a better impact on others. Because finally, it's about, as you have said, also character, is about behavior, is about values. What are the values that I want to bring into my life, into my behavior, into my actions, so that can have an impact, positive impact on others. And this is very connected with intention also. Some leaders, when they understand what is intention, they change completely. We have to be present, and at the same time, we have to be intentional. And intention means that you create a thought in your mind, how I want to behave with this person, in this meeting, in this place. And this thought then creates like an energy, a vibration that goes with you and your actions, and then create a different impact. So when you are intentional, you can guide your life, and you can decide the impact that you want to have in your team, in the people around you, and also with your family. Some leaders, when they have realized this small thing, but it's a big thing, when they went home after a long day of work, and they create an intention, very simple intention, I want to be present at least for a few moments with my children. They make a big change, because if not, they arrive tired, they arrive without energy. And this is the intention without even being conscious of that. No, we always have an intention. So when you are consciously intentional, these change many things in your life.
Yeah, I really like what you're saying there, that picking up on what Abias's point around each of us becoming the narrator of our own story and filling the pages of our life with whatever story we want to tell. And in a way, the resource that we're dealing with here is the human spirit. So we need to nurture the human spirit so that it has the space to flourish and thrive. And I wonder if this is something that your big blue chip companies are now really understanding, that they have to honor the whole person, not just see the employee in terms of their existence at work. And I'm hearing that, big companies like Nike and others are, giving as a free company facility access to one of these online meditation, mindfulness, calm apps, of creating rooms that people can go into for chilling out and just taking a moment for themselves. Do you get a sense from the companies that you're working with that they're looking at the whole person in a different way? And perhaps that has been prompted by what happened during COVID with the working from home, and people got a taste for a more balanced life. Do you have a sense that this is a cultural change within organizations?
Yes, not a sense, but it is happening. And I've seen in different not all organizations, but many of them, they are creating a department of well-being. And this is something new that it was not before. And it has happened during COVID because they have realized that people are getting very stressed. They leave the jobs. So it's a problem when people are getting too much pressure, too much stress, and they are not being able to lead with all these things. So they have created this department, but many times they don't know exactly what to do because it's something new. And before coming to India, I was participating in a workshop, facilitating a workshop about sustainability in leadership. So it was a new term. And in fact, it was about energy. And mainly it was about connecting with themselves, getting space for themselves, having a more balanced life. And it was also a challenge for this group of 30 leaders, high leaders level, because they were used to work and work and work and work, and they were complaining about so much work. But at the same time, when we were offering them some tools to work on themselves, it was so new for them that they were struggling a little bit. But I could say that after one day and working with them, they felt so happy at the end and so relaxed, in a sense that they were saying, oh, I was able to disconnect for one day and nothing happened. So it's a new training. Leaders need to know that they don't need to have so much control over everything. They need to trust more. They need to connect more with themselves, and they need to use the resources that they have inside themselves so that they can have a different impact, not only controlling things. And they realize in one day. So the company is very happy with us, and they want to do all this with the rest of the leaders. And I think some of us, we can help a lot in this field, introducing the tools for these leaders to be able to have a more balanced life, and also to deal with this big pressure and tension that is in this world. And we have to accept that this is there. So I think yes, and I'm very happy to that, because this is what I'm trying to convey for many years, and now it's happening in a practical way.
I'm sure, Judy, there's a lot there that you would chime with. But there's another theme that I see emerging in people, and that is a very strong need to have a sense of purpose in their life, and of wanting to work in a field that is ethical and sustainable and feels like it is working towards making positive changes in the world. And in many cases, young people are preferring an ethical company over one that's going to pay them better, because that has become important to them. Can you say something there, Judy, about this kind of sense of calling that we are seeing in the young generation, that they feel the critical times that we're in, and they want to feel that their life is somehow making a difference?
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Philippa. The youth that I'm seeing internationally, but primarily in Canada, I think, and this is a generation that are just really entering leadership now. So I'm talking between 24 and 35-year-olds, say. That generation in Canada right now, they're very happy to have a 4-day week over a high salary. They'd much prefer to have the 3-day weekend. So they have a day to decompress, a day to actually enjoy themselves, and a day to get ready to go back to work. So they're less willing to make the sacrifice of their entire life and their life energy for a place that isn't theirs. So that's whatever workplace they're in. But then I see them much more comfortable, and it's bad for their resumes because, you know, the parents' generation has a resume that says, I worked here for 20 years and I worked here for 10, or, you know, and they've got this, I worked here for a maternity leave. So I replaced somebody for, 9 months, and I worked here for, and so their resume looks a little bit more like they're hopping around, and it doesn't always look good for an older generation boss who might be hiring them. But what I see in resumes like that is such a desire to learn, to grow, to it's kind of like they are the development project themselves. And so there's another opportunity to develop an aspect of my skill set or my practice, right? Or my natural talent. So I see them with kind of a long-term view and a willingness to be agile, move around, do what it takes to build themselves in the context of a balanced life. And I don't think balance means I go home at the end of the day and spend time with my family. I think balance is for the whole week, for that 7-day work week period. They'd rather do a 4 on, 3 off. Like they're balancing the whole picture, not just a coming home at the end of the day with more energy for the family, which is how our generation defines work-life balance. So that's one of the things that I'm seeing. I'm also seeing them choosing to work in organizations. Maybe they were their career path or their training at university would lead them to work in a private sector organization. I'm seeing them choosing community organizations, NGOs, sometimes government in Canada, over the private sector. And I'm seeing them going back and forth, that they don't get boxed in one or the other. And I think that's also very much part of this hybriding. Let's blend many different things together. I feel like it's very much a Renaissance time where we're blending science and spirituality, creativity and left brain, organizing. So I find that very hopeful.
And maybe a measure of having that balance is the extent to which you have a creative expression, a creative outlet in your life, because that is the sign of being in touch with your own spiritual impulse, to allow that to express itself in some form in a non-work related way.
If you look at most Instagram accounts of the 24 to 35-year-old, they're fantastically creative. I mean, within a minute, there's a video reproduction of what just happened 2 minutes ago with a soundtrack and edits. I mean, there are lots of tools available today for young people to be expressing creativity. I know for myself as a leader, people say they're not creative, and yet there are so many different ways to express what's inside of you. And generating ideas, generating projects, generating meaningful conversation, all of that is an expression of creativity. Mm-hmm. So I think it's about the individual needing to express what's within. And work can be a place where that happens or not, depends on the quality of leader you have.
Mm. Shantian, coming back to you in Beijing, you're also a program director for Oxford Leadership. So I wonder about the scope of that remit and how much success you have with encouraging people to nurture their inner spirit and carve out a space within their lives where that can happen.
I think lots of people need time for themselves. I went to Alibaba many times, Alibaba, and the middle level leaders, I asked them to go outside of their huge building and just to take about an hour for themselves And many of them come back saying, oh my gosh, I haven't really been in the campus, be with the trees and the grasses for a long, long time. I'm always running, having lots of thoughts about the projects and the work. We never enjoyed. You know, you were saying taking leaders as whole person. Lots of people, they just have this idea of their work identity. You know, when I'm speaking, I remember one leader in China. He's the top leader of a huge internet company. And he said to me, you know, through my hands, it will be like 200 billion yuans, RMBs, goes through my hands every year or even more. And he always says to me, I want to win. You know, how can I win? So one day when I was first meeting him, I looked into his eyes and said, what if one day you lose? And he got stuck there. He stared at me and he didn't say anything. And like 2 years later, because I finished the coaching session and then he moved to another company and all that. And then he said, you know, that day when you asked me that question, what if you lose? You didn't get first. It touched me. I could see from his eyes the fear. Even though he has so much, everybody else in the world will feel, you know, he's on top of the world. He's managing such a big company and getting so much revenue and like everything else is great from an outsider point of view. But I know he has so much fear of losing, so much fear of not having what he has at that time. So I think lots of leaders, they're attached to external identity that might fall apart. So many of them work based on fear, based on worries and tension. And they feel they're creating a good company, creating lots of income, but actually, I think people are becoming slaves of money, of achievements. They're no longer the master. So, you know, doing our work, we try to inspire people to start from their own inner being, like what you're saying, intentions and purposes. If I'm not chasing after money and achievements and acknowledgement from the society, but I'm just like a flower. I blossom because I'm that. And then, you know, the creativity you were just talking about, it coming naturally. And you're not pushed by fear, by all those anxieties. I think that's like very deep in leaders right now. First, we have to be well. And I always tell them, you know, as a leader, you're the seed of the company. Whatever you have, the tree of company will have. Whatever you're lacking, and the tree won't have. And if you're so anxious, so worried, that will impact your people. And they're afraid to make mistakes. They're so intense and no creativity, no greatness, no joy of work anymore. So we get people to connect to the source, the beautiful source inside that they're not pushed by outside things. They come from inside. I think each human being, they have beautiful qualities. They have lots of love, lots of joy, lots of creativity. If we can get leaders to connect to that, and they start from there, so they're the seed of the company, and the intention, the awareness, and starting point inside the leaders, that's the true seed. If we work on that seed, then everything else about themselves, their well-being and the well-being of the team and the organization will all get well. So that's like what I have passion for.
And we so feel that passion from you as you're speaking, Shantian. And it feels like we have reached a moment in time where this shift in consciousness is almost like an evolutionary leap that we have to now make, where we redefine our understanding of success. And success doesn't mean I win and you lose. Success means that somehow we move forwards together so that everyone is included in this journey of global transformation, really.
Exactly. I think we just need to have a big heart, generous heart. Nature is like that. The big tree doesn't say, oh, you grass, you are so low. Everyone has their own existence. We don't need to compete. Each one has its own beauty, has its own contribution to the world, and let each one be, and we'll be great together.
I've got a big smile on my face hearing you speak, and I really hope that this message lands with everyone listening to this, because it feels really important. Abias, it's a lovely image, really, that as with nature, every tiny part of nature is playing its role in making the natural world function in the way that it does, right down to the small bees that do the pollinating. And it's such a delicate web, such a balance that is maintained, and that somehow, if we can create a vision for the future that honors each one's role and nurtures the talent and the potential within each human heart and spirit, that we do have between us collectively the capability to make the changes that are going to be needed in order to not just survive but thrive during the changes that are happening around us. What would your sense be about that?
Philip, I am very, very privileged to live in a beautiful country. Namibia is so beautiful. It's wide open spaces. The nature is open. The air is fresh every day. I'm privileged to inhale clean air. Looking at the mountains, looking at the dunes and the vegetation. And I think sometimes we get so busy in our daily lives that we forget to just take a moment and look around us where we are, and to appreciate nature and the environment in which we live. And I think when you spoke earlier about, just taking those executives out of the building and let them experience the trees and the nature around them, that's when you realize that you are alive. You are not just, this person that is just constantly running around and, having to, to bring in the numbers, do the sales, making sure that people come to work, but that you actually get connected with your environment. And I think that is where the essence lies, to just be connected and be grounded. And whatever it is, the challenges that we are faced, I think slowly for me, they start to dissipate when I I show gratitude first and foremost, to the nature around me. Yes, in terms of the vision, and looking forward as leaders, and to bring about that transformation, I think, first and foremost, vision is key. Whether it is an individual vision, whether it is that of an organization, or whether it is a community or a collective vision, I think it is crucial that is always shared. That it is always shared. When it is shared, it becomes almost like an impetus, for you to move with something. Because, when people, when these big movements come about, people shout, certain slogans or expressions, what is that rallying thing that actually gets you wake up in the morning every day to go out and to do what you have to do? So if we can get that, and we get to, the individual to believe in that vision or to believe in that dream, then continue to repeat it. It becomes a part of you, and you embrace it, and it becomes part of your emotion. It becomes part of your being, becomes part of your expression. And I think that is the recipe or the tools, for you to thrive in life. Otherwise, we don't want to get stuck. You don't want to be stale water, so you need to actually keep infusing, that vision or that dream into your everyday life, and then appreciate whatever is around you, because the environment is part of us. We need to constantly go with it, as we go along. And I say, like I said, when you share the vision, it becomes a collective responsibility. It's not just one person. If we all believe in that vision, it becomes a collective responsibility of all of us to make sure that it happens.
Thank you for that, Abias. Now, I'm not sure if we have any questions coming from the floor. Paranya, if you're able to ask those, that would be lovely.
Yeah, from the auditorium, we have the students sitting, and Kriti Agarwal from PGDM first year, she has a question. Kriti, can you be Kriti?
Yes, ma'am. Good morning. So my question to you is that the topic for our youth conference is leadership and collaboration. So I have this question that there's this perception that leaders are born. So do you feel that there are certain things that needs to be taught to the leaders, like they are born? So don't you think that they already have the preconceived notion about certain things? So any contrary thoughts you have to this?
So your question, Kriti, to whom? You are posing the question to whom? If you can
Anyone of them could answer.
Okay. So of course, I believe Judy has already answered this particular question. But I would request Judy to again elaborate, because she has said that leadership is about training, and it can be shaped and bring out the best character in oneself. So I would request Judy to again just give your insight to what Kriti is asking.
Dr. Prina, could you please repeat the question, because it wasn't 100% clear?
Okay, so she's saying there is a quote that leaders are born. So to what extent do you resonate with this statement?
That was the question. To what extent do I resonate with that experience that leaders are born?
Or are they made?
Or are they made? Well, I suppose every moment's a new moment, so I can be born every moment a better leader than I was last moment. I think that within each of us, we have the potential. We already every day lead ourselves through life. and we lead in our little home or family or community, that it's just a question of sphere. How much bigger? If I can lead myself well, meaning I know what motivates me, I know how to keep myself going and motivated, I know how to overcome the obstacles that come in my life, the degree to which I perfect that or develop mastery in this area for myself, I'm very able to do that with others. It's the same that they say in therapy. You can only ever go, a therapist can only ever go as deep with a person as they have gone themselves. It's the same for a leader. The extent to which I know how to manage all those things that come up in me and lead myself towards what I aspire to, my vision for myself, my life, to that extent, I can bring that in a group setting. I can have empathy and compassion and see how others are getting blocked, but they get in their own way. And so to rely on people's intrinsic motivation, rather than being a leader who dangles a carrot, a reward, or, threatens a stick, some kind of punishment or reprisal, right? So if I manage myself that way, then I will definitely manage others with rewards and punishment. I will be a parent who does that. So yes, there's a natural leader born, but I can develop that leadership capacity. And I'm my first guinea pig. Working with myself effectively helps me work well with others. I hope that helps, Kriti.
Yeah, Kriti. So our next question comes from Nimisha. Nimisha, are you there?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, so you can pose your question, please.
Hi, everyone, and good morning to all. My question is to Mr. Abius. First of all, a very happy birthday. So my question is, according to many economists and reports, most of the countries might be diving into economic recession, the unforeseen economic recession. So how do you think this threat of recession will impact the media in the country of Namibia? And how would you motivate and prepare those 70% of young budding leaders which are part of your company?
Okay, you are speaking just a little bit fast, and I'm trying to catch. I've heard the recession, and what would you just repeat the last part of it?
So, sir, how would this recession, this threat of recession, would impact the media industry in the country of Namibia? And how would you motivate and prepare your young leaders, which constitute 70% of your company? So how would you motivate and prepare them for the future?
Thank you so much for the question. I think it is a very, very important question that is rooted in reality. And I think sometimes we talk about look within when you don't have anything to eat, when you don't have a job, when you don't have any means of survival. And I think those are reality issues and facts, on the ground that we need to take into consideration. And yes, the impact of COVID on economies, particularly within Namibia, has been very, very severe. People have lost their jobs. Young people who had started their businesses have lost them. The banks have repossessed their properties, etc., etc. It really is hard times. And my stance is always, you know what? It's a season. It's a season. And just as we experience different seasons, in the environment, that you have winter, you have summer, you have spring. So it is with our lives. So consider that as a season, and do what you can check in with your neighbor. And I think this is where I was talking about, really people supporting each other. Out of COVID, so many support groups have emerged where people are looking at to say, okay, what has happened to your business? Can we support you in this way? Can we help you to just reestablish again? So there are those initiatives that are happening. So, and I think my advice to young people is that, key into some of those groups. They are, at least in Namibia, those support groups are there. And you will get motivation there. You will get support there. People are crowdfunding, for just to help each other, to cope with the current challenges. Those realities are there. There are engagements, that, and again, those are what we call, leaders, that are really, effective leadership, is taking a challenge and deal with it and deal with the challenge. That really comes from effective leadership. So we have individuals, in these groups that are taking up some of the issues with the government, for example, to say, okay, we want to go and speak to the president, we want to go and speak to this minister, to do something about this situation. And those things are working. Those are the efforts. Those are the things that I am saying, particularly for young people. Never, ever let a challenge stop you. Move ahead, move forward, keep moving forward. Don't silence your voice because somebody is saying this to you. You are the author of your story, of your life. Thanks.
Thank you so much. I believe now we'll not take more questions because time is already running ahead. And now it's my privilege to present the vote of thanks. But first of all, I would like to take this opportunity to thank BK Sister Jayanti, with whose support I have been possible to connect with all of you. And BK Sister Jayanti, she is the additional administrative head of the Brahma Kumaris and the director of the Brahma Kumaris activities in Europe and Middle East, and who has been instrumental in connecting me to Miss Philippa, and Miss Philippa has been kind enough to extend her all support in identifying the esteemed panelists from the different parts of the globe and making it truly an international panel. And all the diverse views which we have received today from all the panelists. And Sister Philippa, you have steered the session quite well in a very interesting and intriguing way. And the thoughts that have been presented, I would not name, but the thoughts like leadership is personal. You have to be compassionate, high on vision, and overcome the weaknesses of the team. And leaders have the ability to lift other people, and they should aim to create good leaders, appreciate, be open, humble, willing to communicate, willing to understand, and as Judy has said, agile and nimble. And leadership is all about, in the global scenario that we are witnessing, which is quite challenging, and everybody in our personal lives and professional lives, we all are facing some of the crisis, and there are leaders who will hold you on in these critical times. And I owe my sincere thanks to BK Sister Jayanti. For every challenge which I come, I just email her, and the strength and the empowerment that she gives me during, and she has been there guiding me, mentoring me in my personal and professional challenges. So these are the great leaders and whom we can look up to, and all the esteemed panelists who have said that take out time for yourself, go within. And in these critical times, it is your within the inner inspiration that will lead you to greater heights, no matter whatever challenges you face. The success in these challenging times, it is not about to survive, but to thrive, as Philippa has already mentioned. We need to thrive, but how? It is through interdependence, community spirit, collaboration, and the positive radical change, which Judy has mentioned. And of course, Abias have said that we need to take inspiration from the nature itself. Take out silence, take out time for yourself, go in silence and have a balanced view. It is like it is mentioning that youth are now, they are not looking for say big salaries or big pay packets. They are looking for time for themselves and of course for the world at large. So a great manifesto has been presented, and I believe the leaders who are listening, they'll take a note of it, and each one is a leader in its oneself. We lead our families, we lead ourselves in our daily routine, and so we have to take a note of all the good things that has been shared, and a very brilliant session. And thank you so much. Words, there are no words. So there are no words, because human emotions, they lean heavily on words, but when it comes to say give gratitude, nothing can, because it is in our inner heart that I can just thank you so much for this very enlightening session.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Saran ma'am, for coming and sharing a good insight for our student and all the guests. Thank you, ma'am. Thanks, Saran. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Well done, Chat.
Holy
cow.
Well done, all of us.
Well done, everyone.
That was a super session.
That's recorded. Get the recording. We'll put it on like this. It's really lovely.
It was very good. Wasn't Abias lovely?
Yes.
He's pretty much a BK now.
Is he?
Yeah. Big open heart. Yeah. But you know, it's just, I really see the value of a big international panel, because you feel like you're spanning the world. You know, it does have a lovely feeling about it.